I was just noticing the little naked figures in the building across the way. Hello. I have a book called Jimmy the King by Garcia-Roberts, Murder, Vice, and the Reign of a Dirty Cop. This all takes place on Long Island. Long Island is a suburb, basically, of New York City. There are two counties in Long Island. There's Nassau, which is closer to the city, and there is Suffolk, which is further out. Well, all this takes place in Suffolk County, further out, and it is kind of pretty much far out. We meet it's about police. It's about police and crime. It's a crime. It's a biography of a guy who became chief of police in the Suffolk County Police Department. James Burke, Jimmy the King. He rose out of a weird situation in the 70s, I mean 1979, something like that. Way back in the 70s, a kid was murdered, a teen boy was murdered, missing, and then found dead, murdered in woods near his neighborhood, in the neighborhood where there's mostly houses around, but a little bit of woods here and there. Well, he was in one of those woods where he was found. So they ended up pinning the crime on some neighborhood boys around his same age, about 4 of them, and another boy in the neighborhood, Jimmy Burke, who was 14 years old at the time, testified against these guys. 2 of them, actually, with the same kind of testimony that he had heard one of them say something like, the Long Island, according to this book, the Long Island Police, the Suffolk County Police Department don't know how to solve murders. Their homicide division is horrible. What they do is basically get a suspect and beat the confession out of them. Take them into a room, attach them to a chain on the floor with a loop, and beat them up until they confess. So that's really not modern police procedure, and that's not really the way to do things. People, as we know, when people are tortured, they end up kind of confessing to whatever, and that's what happened in this situation, where they keep badgering. All right, I did it, or we're going to kill your mother unless you confess, that kind of thing, which comes in later in the book. So this kid Jimmy claims that he heard these kids say that, the cops will never find out. It's kind of vague statements like that, but that was enough for the jury to convict these kids and put them in prison for, one of them's in prison till 2003, like, over 40 years. So that's how Jimmy got to be a white hat. A white hat is cops want to get their perp. They want to solve the case. They want to move on to the next thing. They want to go out for coffee. They want to do whatever. They don't want to get bogged down and have something else come into a case that's looking like it's wrapping up, and then throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing and have them start over again. So a white hat is someone who is testifying in the way the case toward toward what the cops have in mind anyway. So a white hat is someone who's helping the cops. So this Jimmy ends up being the white hat in this situation and establishing a relationship with this guy who's going to be end up being the prosecutor, the district attorney for the county for many years, Tom Spada or Spota. So I started reading this book because I listened to a podcast that's called Probably Canceled. And the woman who hosts the podcast had a woman on who had another podcast a few years ago that was about the Long Island serial killer. That's another aspect. This is a complicated story. There's another part of the story is that there's a Long Island serial killer who has been killing women who have been prostituting themselves. So, and their bodies were being found here and there. Well, so the podcast is about that. I think it's called Unraveled. And in the course of talking about that, she said, there's a really good book about James Burke, the guy who became the head of police. So, chief of police, that's what I was going to say. So I got the book and read the book, and here I am talking about it. So I have listened to a couple of episodes of the podcast, but not that much. And the podcast ends up talking a lot to this guy, Christopher Loeb, who was another young man around this time, a little later, and who ended up finding a bag that contained, out of the cop's car, out of the chief of police's car, he got took out a bag, stealing stuff out of cars, going around trying handles, see if he could find stuff to steal to feed a heroin habit. So he finds this bag, which has dildos in it. It has DVDs, pornographic DVDs, and has clips for Glock 9 and some other stuff like that. Oh, IDs, the cop's ID. So he gets popped, and the police come to his house, and they take some of the evidence without logging it. The bag of the chief of police. The chief of police shows up at the interrogation at the police precinct and beats on the kid, like the rest of them are beating on the kid. So he comes in and joins in the beating on the kid, and said, "We're going to kill you and all your family in case instead you confess," or what. I don't know what they were trying to get out of him, but. So all this led eventually to the unraveling of the career of this guy. And that's the story that we have in here, and as well as the kind of behavior that he had on the way up, how he would have sex with his girlfriend who was prostituting herself, who he met out when she was out on the street, how he would do crack and cocaine with her and have sex in his car, and all this stuff came out later. And he ended up getting quite a relationship with these powerful people in town, which kept protecting his career. So another part of this that's in the podcast, but not really in the book at all, is that there's this Long Island serial killer thing going on. And the podcast is sort of implying that the Long Island serial killer could have been this guy, James Burke, who is, who's better to learn how to kill somebody but a cop. So this this book seems to be just about the facts, not any speculation. But you know, there is a certain kinkster element to the personality of Burke. There is a point that's in the podcast too, and in the book, where he like meets another cop guy, and sort of out of the blue asks him if he knows where he can get a snuff tape, a snuff video. A video of someone being killed, apparently during a sex act in what he's looking for, because apparently that creates a certain physiological effect in the victim that then can be felt by the perpetrator. So he asked this other cop if if he knows where you can get one, and the cop's like, "What? What's with this guy? Why did he ask me this? What sort of question is this? What this guy is definitely kind of off, So Christopher Loeb, when he steals the bag, he ends up, saying that he's found a snuff video among these other pornographic videos. So, and that's part of what the podcast apparently is going to try to do to, if it's going to speculate whether he was a killer sex fiend or just a sex fiend, and that kind of thing there. So that's kind of the story of Jimmy the King, and it's a pretty interesting book about cops and cop stuff, and I learned a lot of stuff about cops and how cops get there, and the cops in Long Island make a lot of money. They like these Long Island guys come to New York and get police training here, and then get hired out there because the Long Island cops pay much more money, and plus they can live out there. So a lot of cops live on Long Island. I lived on Long Island for a while. I didn't like it. I was like, kind of resisting all along the way, and I was out there because of a relationship, but I kind of miss some of it now. But anyway, Long Island's pretty weird, and it has lots and lots of cops. City cops live out there with their families, and they have lots of Long Island cops too. So it's kind of cop world out there. So that's Jimmy the King, and I like the book. So we'll talk to you another time.